I ended up reading all the sales books, going through all the scripts, and I memorized a lot of this stuff. I internalized some of them and I got better, but I knew there was something a bit off with my words and my language and my mindset. So I got into NLP, hypnosis. I read everything I could. And then somebody said to me, well, you got to check out this guy, Tony Robbins. I was like, who's Tony Robbins? They're like, you don't know Tony Robbins. Next thing I know, I got the books and the CDs and I'm listening to this guy. He's all pumped up and he's got no script. A lot of times in sales or speaking, we overscript what we do, where we might be great tacticians and people can stand in front of an audience and say something with the perfect staccato tone of voice and they sound really good and motivational, but I don't think that's what influences people, where they feel authentic, like expression of this guy's real, this is connected, this is raw, like there's something here happening, this isn't a performance.
True transformation happens through behavioral shifts. If you look back to the parts of your life where you've transformed, it's usually when you made a decision. From those moments, like the day I decided to quit my sales job, believe me, I didn't read any books on that. The day I decided to start SMB team, we rolled out 4 different new business units for my company, all under one umbrella. Did I read books on these things? No. I had to be in a place of conviction. I had to be in touch with my clients' needs. And then at one point I had to go, this is happening. On today's podcast, I'm meeting with one of my closest friends, and he also happens to be one of the best salespeople. He was Tony Robbins' #1 salesperson. He's closed over $100 million from stage, and he knows persuasive communication better than any human being I've ever met on planet Earth. Eli, I'm excited to dive into this.
Boom. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I'm going to probe into your wizardry. And what we're going to talk about today is how to get what you want through communication. You have spoken in front of rooms of over 25,000 people for some of the biggest personal development events in the world. A lot of people don't have experience even selling one-to-one. You not only have experience selling one-to-one, but you also have experience selling 1 to 25,000. So by breaking down some of the lessons you've learned, my hope is that how do you go from taking someone from not knowing who you are, introducing a new idea to them, and then having them take action on that idea. So share a little bit about your story, and then we'll dive into the wizardry.
I started off in sales, like you, on the phone. So I was selling
people.
That's it. And first of all, and I know a lot of your audience is already articulate, but I wasn't clear in my communication. So clarity is power. We've heard all these principles, but I wasn't connecting. And when I did get resistance, I would fumble and stutter and all of that. So it's not just what we're saying. Sometimes having communication is about the responses to things not working out, not just in what we say linguistically, but in our nervous system.
Yep.
That we talk, and you hear a lot about this transfer of certainty, being confident and certain. But when things are not going well, how do you know not just what to say, but say it in the right tone, where you're still connected and calm to put somebody at ease? That's in a one-on-one context. But for me, I got in this sales company, and I always, I mumbled a lot and stuttered because I had a big gap in my teeth when I was a kid. Eventually, obviously, I got the gap fixed after high school. So I got the gaps fixed, but the insecurity was still there. And so I still mumbled, and that really affected my income and my ability to project my voice. And some of that comes, you could tell somebody just be louder, but emotion is what drives all behavior. And so for me, there were certain things in me where I wasn't confident in what I was saying. I didn't internalize what I was saying. And then when I got resistance because I didn't have a clear outcome and where I was going for the call or for my life, the words didn't land. And I ended up reading all the sales books, going through all the scripts, and I memorized a lot of this stuff. I internalized some of them and I got better, but I knew there was something a bit off with my words and my language and my mindset and just my self-concept. So I got into NLP, hypnosis. I read everything I could, and I like, this makes a lot of sense because NLP, nervous system, linguistics, language, programming, how do we begin to condition ourselves mentally and emotionally in just our whole nervous system to be a certain way? And then somebody said to me, well, you got to check out this guy, Tony Robbins. I was like, who's Tony Robbins? They're like, you don't know Tony Robbins. Next thing I know, I got the books and the CDs and I'm listening to this guy. He's all pumped up and he's got no script. And I was a lot of times in sales or speaking, we overscript what we do, where we might be great tacticians and people can stand in front of an audience and say something with the perfect staccato tone of voice and they sound really good and motivational, but I don't think that's what influences people, where they feel authentic, like expression of this guy's real, this is connected, this is raw, like there's something here happening, this isn't a performance. we're having a real dialogue here, whether it's one-on-one or one-to-many. And I felt like that in Tony's CDs. I felt like that, like in everything I listened to. I felt like this guy was communicating. He was like a real human, not just some guy reading from his audiobook. And it was transformative for me to just see how he communicated. I saw that he was speaking at some big event with like Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki, and all these people were selling stuff, most of them, like Forex trading, no money down real estate, whatever. And I was there, I was into sales, so most times you go to these pitch fest and people hate it because it's a pitch fest. I loved it because I wanted to see how they would sell, and some people were really good, but it does get kind of old after a while. You know, they do the discount and the stack and all of that. And then I was about to leave, but thank God I didn't, because then Tony came out. He was supposed to speak for 2 hours, he spoke for 4.5. And at the end of it, he said, if you got anything from these 4 hours, spend 4 days with me, I'll change your life or I'll give you your freaking money back. And he just had all this certainty, and the way that he connected with people, the way that he engaged, I laughed, I cried. I was emotionally connected to this man, even though I was in a room with about 40,000 people. And I just was like, what did this guy do?
What was the name of that event?
That was like a 1 day, or it was a 2 day.
Is that where they get all the speakers in? What's it called?
It was called the Learning Annex back then. Then it went to the Success Resources.
That's it, Success Resources. Yeah. I went to a Success Resources.
Similar.
And Tony Robbins did the very end and went for, instead of 2, went for 4 hours too.
We saw the same talk. Yeah.
Oh my God, and that was in Philly, so that probably wasn't where you were, but they went all over with that.
Yep.
Wow.
Same thing.
That changed my life.
Same here.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And he sold his UPW event.
Yep.
4 days where you walk on fire and all of that.
Yep.
And I went to it, and for me individually, like a lot of times people go to that event and Tony talks about standards and commitment and discipline and decisions and all these really cool tools.
Yep.
But the person that gave me the idea to work for Tony was actually somebody else. We were talking about how amazing the experience was, and this guy's name was Brian. And he says, I think I'd like to work with Tony Robbins. Tony had just done, you've done UPW, like the Simon and Says thing, and he said like most people opt out, like they're not really committed. And he gave people an experience of what it is where we kind of just give up. And I thought about it, I was like, man, maybe out of these 5,000 people, one person could commit all the way and do whatever it takes, like the ultimate success formula, figure out what you want and keep on changing your approach until you hit it. And I thought to myself, you know, I'm going to be the one. Like I'm going to follow that. So after the event, I called Tony's company over 200 times, period of 2 weeks. I was like, they're going to put me in jail or give me a job. I was willing to do anything, and I worked my way up really, really quick. But reverse engineering the process, every 3 months, we ended up, they gave us a script. We focused on the language, and I would do this presentation. And I got pretty good pretty quick because I was really committed and I had a bit of an acting background. But some people were better than others. And we would really internalize, why are some people better? And I would test some things, and then every few months I would go see Tony and I'd see what he did. And I'd begin to model some of the things that he was doing. And something he said to me one time, you know, because I know like if you're listening here, you know, we've all got content. A lot of people posting on social media, this will go on social media. Part of the reason I did this story, so I gave the whole story, but more important than the content is the perception of the content, or what we call the POV, the perception of value. So there's people that have valuable courses, valuable products, valuable services, but they don't make as much money as some others. Even in hypnosis, they pre-frame you with what's about to happen. They say, not yet, but in a moment, I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and you're going to begin to feel very sleepy. So we're creating expectations of the thing before you actually experience the thing. And so in a seminar or an event, there's the story, there's the content, and say you have like some really amazing content, but you just teach it, you're like, oh, it's good, or they'll kind of judge it or whatever. You can change the perception of the value. So we started looking at every bit of information that came out of my mouth or Tony's or anybody who we found to be really, really influential. They would teach something, like what made that dynamic? What made that land? So obviously tonality, charisma, all the things we saw Grant Cardone, I wasn't expecting much, but he was so charismatic and he had a system and an engagement.
You told me that.
Energy and all of that. I was surprised.
You told me that the charisma, oh yeah, we watched him at that speaking thing. And you were analyzing him. I remember that.
So there's a lot of things that we look at on how people create frames. Like we call it the aligned adversary. So for him, the enemy, so people connect when they have an enemy, him, the government. You know, this says in God we trust on the dollar. That ain't God's money. That ain't even your money. It's the bank's money. You know, who's got my money? You know, and he has them say it. So there's all these little things that he does.
And the conviction.
And
which you called out, like, because someone can have low conviction and decent perception of value and decent value, but ultimately all three of those things have to mix together. Meat, like actual meat, real value, plus the perception of value, plus the conviction of the delivery.
Given the two, if somebody had dog crap content, but really good charisma, really good framing, really good in changing your perception of the content,
they're going to win.
Versus somebody who's really doesn't understand how to frame things and has the best content, the first person is going to win. So it's changing somebody's perception. That's what branding is. That's what story is. That's what all of it.
So one of my biggest insights, and this is something that you helped me with when I first met you, was the understanding that the more you teach, the less people tend to take action, right? So in my public speaking journey, and even in my sales journey, I learned very quickly, because I read a lot of books. I know you educate yourself a lot too. And sometimes that can lead to information dumping, where you just vomit all this information on someone. You think, because I'm smart, they're going to buy from me, right? And what happens is people accumulate this subconscious to-do list, where they basically build all these action items that, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. If I want to be successful, I got 87 action items now, and now I'm overwhelmed. And you know how I feel when I'm overwhelmed? I feel like I can't take action. I feel like I should procrastinate because this is too cumbersome for me to figure out. That's why true transformation happens through behavioral shifts. So if you look back to the parts of your life where you've transformed, it's usually when you made a decision, right? So you made a decision like a never again, right? That whole concept of never again, this stops today, right? I do, right? That's a Tony Robbinism, right? And from those moments, like the day I decided to quit my sales job, believe me, I didn't read any books on that. The day I decided to start SMB team, I didn't read any books on that. We rolled out 4 different new business units for my company. We're at the venue right now. You saw those 4 new things. Those are new business units for my company. We have a virtual assistant company now. We have a 7-figure attorney mastermind. We have a fractional CFO program. We have a bookkeeping service that we're rolling out, all under one umbrella.
Amazing.
Did I read books on these things?
No.
I had to be in a place of conviction. I had to be in touch with my clients' needs. And then at one point I had to go, this is happening, right? When we spend $300,000 to promote one of our events, which, I mean, you've spoken at some of our events, some of our webinars, like those webinars, they didn't just come from reading a book on it. They come from me making a decision that we're going to spend X because we're going to get this result, and because I have so much conviction in this result, this is nothing. The $300,000 I got to invest in order to make 2 or 3 million, it doesn't matter. It's nothing compared to where I'm going, and I know where I'm going. And when you infect an audience, which you're an expert at, when you infect an audience with that level of conviction, they feel unstoppable, and they actually end up making the decisions that they need to make.
And for people that speak or even sell, it comes this question of, when people overteach, it's not bad to teach, but a lot of times we overteach out of our insecurity. Like, I want to give value. I want to be perceived as valuable, so we dump value on people, but they can't absorb all of that. So the question becomes, like, what is true value? The target, and I'll kind of reverse engineer the process that I think through this, but the target, the outcome of all my communication in a sales call even, wasn't like excited agreement. Like, I need to do that. That's usually a non-buyer response. The best target for your audience, for your talk, whatever, is somebody having the response like, wow, I never thought of it that way. So how do we begin to shift perception and belief about like what's possible, about who they are? And if you can get people to believe differently about their identity, about their past, about their future, about behavior, about who they are as a leader, and the opportunities before them, and to really look at maybe even some negatives and have a positive reframe around it. Well, here's what's great about that. Well, here's what this ultimately means. And the structure of even a belief is like an if-then-mean statements, like if this, then that, or cause-effect meaning. I don't have money, which means I can't invest in the program. Somebody else is like, well, I don't have money, so that means I really need to get in the program.
Yeah.
So it's a different meaning. And so we can play with the meaning side, or we can even play with the cause side. Well, the same thinking that got you to this position where you don't have funds, if you don't do something to change that thinking, aren't you going to be in the same spot next year? So the real question is, and we redirect the question, so the real question is, how do we get resourceful to get you the funds that you need to make sure you're not in the same spot next year? That's the real question, isn't it? Because you don't want to be in the same spot next year, do you? So there's pain, pleasure, it's framing, and whether it's like beliefs or values or identity, or we're starting to look at like ultimately understanding why do people do what they do. And a lot of people go through our courses, speaking in sales, and they might have gone through the best sales training, but they're asking really good questions. But I'm like, it's clear to me you don't know why you're saying what you're saying. And then you could even say back what I said, but if you don't understand what you're doing with it and how to take somebody deeper into these levels, there's like surface level, action level, identity level, and this is a deeper level conversation. And knowing that target for your communication, it also changes your frame. Like we're not having a chat, we're not ping-ponging back and forth information. Like we're like, you're in this frame of like, I'm curious what's behind the mask. I'm gonna dig in without being intrusive, but you know that behavior of what's not showing up for this person, their indecision, was caused by something. And so before I'm speaking or selling or whatever, there's 4 things. And I'm gonna give you guys a couple frames where you can see these in action. But the 4 things I really focus on before I speak or sell or what anything, there's these 4 keys have to be dialed. One is belief. Like, what do I believe about these people? What do I believe about what I'm gonna say? So belief and conviction and certainty, it's something you can't fake. When you have absolute belief in what you're communicating, there's an animation to the voice, there's like a texture to the eyes that you can't fake. And so when you have that level of conviction, and I've done thousands of talks all over the world where I was going to companies to sell individuals, I was selling salespeople who knew I was there to sell and they did not want to be sold. So everybody's belief looking at me was, yeah, motivation, I don't need to hear what you have to say. But my belief was, wow, these people really need to hear what I have to say. Like, man, and they didn't like me. I was like, we're gonna be friends? Like, and so I've got this belief in why I'm saying and why I'm here. I've got this physiology where you see most people get on stage, or even like they're sitting all day, they kind of plant, I prowl. So I'm big in my energy, and automatically that interrupts people's pattern based on my presence and how I'm communicating. Slightly bigger, like I can kind of expand my energy into this room, and I'll be slightly bigger than the room. And so my voice, my ability to project and then connect with people, like that right away will pull people in, because you can't influence somebody if you can't get them to pay attention to you. So a lot of people, and we teach something inside of our program with speaking, attention generators and agreement amplifiers. So here's the thing, bottom line is this. If there's one thing you get today, it's this. Here's where most people really mess this up. So these kind of grab your attention, and I'm priming the next thing I want you to believe over and over again. And then there's like agreement amplifiers. Research has proven. You'd have to be an idiot not to realize that. So these are assumptive languages that is moving really quick that have locked in behaviors that I want people to transform. Like, obviously, I don't need to tell you, you can't grow without getting a little uncomfortable. And when you think about in your life the times you gotten the most uncomfortable, that's when you had the opportunity for what? The most growth. And that's what you hear. So we're starting to interweave these beliefs in there. So we got belief, physiology, and then outcome. I always say this, never communicate without an outcome. Even if you're hanging out with your mom or your best friend, you wonder why you're bored. Well, you didn't have an outcome. When I hang out with my mom, like, I want to make her happy. And that also realigns me with like judging my mom, or she's frustrating me, like the outcome, like I'm clear in my target. So I'm moving somewhere. Napoleon Hill talked definite of purpose. So there's an outcome. And so for me, the outcome isn't just to get people to buy. The outcome is always an emotional one, because all action, if they take action or not, is preceded by a thought, a feeling, and a belief. So I've got clear outcomes, and what I want them thinking, feeling, believing about me, about the offer, about the process that leads to the offer, and about themselves. So I'm really clear, and I'm really structured in that. Like I write them out. Here's what they need to be believing about themselves, about the market, about the economy, about time, about urgency. Like, and I will install those beliefs in them, where there'll be no doubt they're going to be believing and thinking that way, and it'll be impossible, because I'm indoctrinating them in this belief system, and I'm getting them to repeat it and write it down, and it's all directed towards these key things that I want. And And not believing them, they're going to experience pain for not believing these things or thinking. And I'm going to associate lots of pain for people out there who think this way.
Yeah.
So them creating the frame. Because in any communication, there's you, there's me, and there's other people.
Yeah.
So a lot of other people, they see an opportunity, what would they say? They'd say, oh, I'll do it later. Oh, the economy's bad. And you and I know those people will never be successful. So we're framing against that. See what I'm doing? So there's always these entities in every communication. So we got belief, physiology, outcome, and the fourth is rapport.
Wow.
And so I always think of myself, what do I love about these people? Because I've been driving like 2 hours to a meeting. For Tony, it's supposed to be 50 people there, 5 people show up, and it's at a company where all the broke people show up.
Yep.
And I can be frustrated, but I've got to discipline my disappointment and get clear on my outcome and think like, why did God or the universe put me in front of these souls?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, I did one of the new guys for the company one time, he was brand new. We drove like 2 hours to a meeting, supposed to be 50 people there, one person showed up. And I was the leader, I had to show as an example for the new guy.
Yeah.
And so I could be like, cancel the meeting, or I could be frustrated. I said, all right, let's go. So I had one, like this lady worked in a real estate company. It was her first day on the job, working at a real estate company. And she was the one person in this huge like meeting room. And I said, let's go. So I did a 2-hour presentation straight to her face, just like that. She was just like, it was just me. And I'm like pounding on the board. I'm like, let's go. And she was like, and so she signed up for the event. I was like, but it was just me talking to her for 2 hours. And she was emotional because there was the guy was critiquing me. And it's interesting, we realized that somebody's always watching us. So that was another level of my own leadership because had somebody not been there, if I hadn't been clear on my outcome, I might have canceled, or I might have half-assed the meeting, or I might have made it really conversational. I was like, I am going to like full Monty on this woman, you know? And I wanted to set the example for them. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to do that all the time. And it was early on in my career. I was like, I want to be that example for other people. Like this is what it means to be influential, to be a leader. And I started to ask Tony about some of these questions and things that he went through. But one of the things he said to me, outside of the rapport and connection that people feel, like you genuinely care. So you need to like think to yourself, why do I care about these people? What do I love about them? What do I respect about them? So that it's not phony. Like it's really got to be real. And he said, outside of your capacity to create a connection with your audience, the most important thing is the preframe. And so going back.
Is that number 4?
So there's belief, there's physiology, there's outcome, and there's rapport. But in, outside of rapport, I think the most important thing around your content or your speaking is the preframe. So when you see people on stage, usually they have somebody introduce them. I never had that in the thousands of talks I did. I just went.
Yeah.
So I speak on stage with all these famous people now, like Ed Milet, Hermosi, all of that. Nobody knows who I am. Yeah. But it's interesting because I don't do any of the introduction or all that stuff. Even though I've sold more than the majority of the people I share a stage with. Yeah. But I didn't really need that. Now we're starting to build a brand around me and all of that. So I will have that. Yeah. But this whole idea of pre-framing. So say somebody has really good content. Like I could give you like a piece of wisdom, and I could just give you the piece of wisdom. And it could be like tracking your numbers or something like that. Something basic. Yeah. But I could frame it. So check this out. So I'm gonna do what's called COO, category of one statement. Okay. So they can't make my content a commodity, like they can get it somewhere else. Yeah. I'm going to frame against the competition. I'm gonna attach money and time and reciprocity all simultaneously in like 12 seconds. Are you ready? Yeah. What every sales course, what every speaking course has failed to mention is what I'm about to share with you. And the reason that all the other trainers out there fail to give this to you is 1, because most of them don't know it, or 2, they know it, but they don't want you to know it. This literally took me 10 years of my life and over $100,000 of my personal money to really get the advice that I needed. It is so crucial, and I know you can't succeed without it, so I just want to give it to you. So category of 1, what every other competition has failed to teach you is this. You can't survive without it. And the reason they don't teach it is 1, they're dumb, they don't know it, or 2, they know it, that they don't want you to know it, so they're unethical. Yeah. And nobody else is teaching you this. Yeah. It literally took me money, 10 years, time, 10 years, and over $100,000 of my own money. It is so crucial, I just want to give it to you. So there were some patterns, and then I give you the advice. Now do you perceive the advice as more valuable? And I haven't taught you anything. Yeah. So I'll show people in our program, I'll show them some of this stuff, and I'm just doing frames. Yeah. And I'll say, look, by the way, I've not actually taught you anything for like 30 minutes. And then I can start pacing. Like even now as you're listening to me, you might begin to realize there's further you can go in your own communication. And I don't know if that means with your spouse, your family, your kids, but there might be something that you realize that's not really the place that you'd like it, And so as you start thinking about what that is, and we're going to get to how you can actually change that, but you need an outcome yourself, because otherwise you're just wasting time. So you need to get absolutely clear before we even get into the content today on what do you actually want to achieve. And that's a great question, isn't it? Bottom line is this. And so I'll start asking rhetorical questions. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, why is this so effective?
Yeah.
Now, why is this so crucial?
Yeah.
So where do most people mess this up? So, and the questions trigger my content. And if you listen to somebody,
understand how good this is?
and if you listen to somebody, there's like statement. When I started watching Tony, I would go to a Tony Robbins event, and I'd see him speak for 16 hours sometimes. And I started to. This was before iPhones.
16
straight
hours.
at Date with Destiny. It would just go crazy. And this is before iPhones.
Wait.
Yeah.
16 hours straight. Tony
There was a
Robbins
break.
spoke
There was
for.
some breaks, but I've seen
How many
Tony.
breaks?
At a Date with Destiny, sometimes he'd do those interventions, and
Yeah.
they'd be long days.
Yeah.
He did a couple trainings internally in the company when I worked there, and these were like 15, 16-hour days with very little breaks. Wow. Intense. Yeah.
That is tapping into a whole different mindset. 16 hours of speaking.
Yeah.
Wow, those 4 pillars are gold. So what I want to ask is, where can everyone follow up with you, Eli? And we're going to do a follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I'm going to pop into your event in a couple weeks, but Eli Wild at sales _sales on Instagram, and then wildinfluence.com is the website. We're dialing in social media and all of that. I made it very hard for people to find me for a very long time. So wildinfluence.com, WILDE influence.com is the website, and we got all sorts of free stuff there.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable. I can't believe how deep you've gone into this. One thing I just want to thank you for is you inspire me on what it means to truly have mastered something. I feel like I'm a jack of all trades every time I talk to you. You know what's interesting is I have learned a lot about how to sell from stage. I have a lot of reps under my belt with that, and promoting events, and getting butts in seats, and creating the offer, and creating the operations side to deliver on the offer, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I've almost, in learning all these micro skills, I hear someone like you, and you are, to me, an example of the level of commitment that someone like a Kobe or a Michael Jordan had to learn.
Yeah, we focused on it hard.
I mean,
and those are great skills that you have. And with all of that, the way and I'll share this last distinction. I saw this graph one time. It's like change or like deviation from norm, which is what we want people to do, change what they're doing across time. And I heard around that same time Michael Jordan say something. He said he never lost a basketball game. He only ran out of time. So the game and the time that we have on the planet, the time that we have in front of the room, the time that we have on the sales call, I start off with the belief that I can sell anybody. So I believe that 1,000%. And I think like if I wanted to coach somebody, if I got to the house at 5 a.m, if I charged less for the coaching, like it's always possible that I could sell somebody. Like I could get 100% of people. I might need to talk to them for a year, be at their house every day, send them flowers every day. But it's like I could do it. So the question becomes, because it's already done, is it worth my time? And how do I get it done in less time? So the whole emotional process, when you think about when you fall in love, at first sight, like what was it? And what is it for different people to have that sensory acuity and behavioral flexibility to move people in a position where I begin, even with my voice, I'm inferior, we connect as a friend, and then I'm changing my tonality a bit and I become slightly more firm.
Yeah.
And now the energy is shifted a bit.
Yeah.
And there's that pause where they begin safe in my guidance.
Yeah.
And then helping them make decisions. And so the whole process of getting people to change from norm, there's a lot of different ways to do it, to make changes to their typical way of thinking and behaving inside of this container. And when Tony or myself will go for 9 or 10 hours, part of it is to people create real change on an unconscious level. And in NLP and hypnosis and all of that, there's an understanding of what's called fractionization. There's your conscious mind as you're listening to me, and even that as a pacing statement, as you're listening to me. And now I'm going to redirect you. You might begin to think about. Now I'm going to start telling you what to think about. As you're listening to me here on this Friday, you're here at the event, you're probably beginning to realize that you could, and I could start making some suggestions based on what's here. There's your conscious mind, your gatekeeper, and your unconscious mind. But when you take people in their experience, out of it, in and out of it, it's called fractionization. And this becomes really, really tired, and people become more suggestible, more compliant. And there's physical compliance, there's verbal compliance, and there's mental compliance. So you start telling people to write things down, they start doing it, and then it's like, and say this out loud, turn to your partner and say these things. And then there's mental compliance. Here's what you're gonna need to think about. And I'm telling you what to think about. So it's a process of indoctrination, depending on how far people want to go down the rabbit hole.
Dude, have you ever thought of just starting a cult?
I read the book True Believer by Eric Hauser, and it's the science of cults. And that's how you do it. But when you create a company, the short word for it is culture. Culture.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And so it's unique language, unique dress, getting people to, and that's what creates tribes, essentially. Yeah. And that's what we're doing as leaders of a company.
Eli, thank you, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Unbelievable. All right, hit the subscribe button. We're going to keep delivering value like this. See you in the next one.
Appreciate you.